Clara Monroe only stepped outside that morning to breathe. She wasn't planning to be a hero, not anymore. But out there on the ice something was drowning. And when she saw those eyes looking up from the water, she felt it. Not fear, not panic. Just one clear thought: if she didn't move right now, it would die. Hi, my amazing friends and family. Welcome back to another story. If you're ready to enjoy this heartwarming one, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I truly love seeing your names and places. And don't forget to explore more beautiful stories here on the channel. Now let's get into today's story. It was a Sunday morning in northern Wisconsin. Mid-February. No cars. No people. Just old trees and cold air pressing down on the quiet town of Laney Ridge. Clara had been staying in her late grandfather's cabin for 6 weeks. She didn't tell anyone she was coming. She just packed what she had and left Virginia after signing her discharge papers. 7 years in the Army. 4 of those in the combat medic unit. That part of her life was over now. Or that's what she told herself. That morning, she hadn't planned on going for a walk. She hadn't planned anything. She just wanted to step outside. The cabin walls felt like they were getting smaller each day. She hadn't made coffee. Hadn't even changed clothes. She slipped on her boots, threw a hoodie over her sleep shirt, and stepped out into the snow. She didn't expect anything. But sometimes life doesn't ask for your permission before it gives you a moment that changes everything. The path behind the cabin led down to the lake. Her grandfather used to take her there when she was small. They would skip rocks and drink lemonade and laugh at nothing. Now it was just ice. Solid. Flat. No colors. Just white and gray as far as the eye could see. Clara walked slowly. No real reason. Just moving. And then she heard it. A strange sound. Not loud. Not sharp. Just strange. She stopped. Looked around. At first she didn't see anything. But then her eyes landed on a dark shape out on the lake. It was moving. Something was struggling near a broken patch of ice. She blinked hard and squinted. A dog. A large one. Thick coat. Long legs. Slipping. Drowning. Clara didn't hesitate. Her boots hit the frozen edge of the lake, and she dropped to her knees. She wrapped her scarf around her wrist and tied the other end to a branch near the shore. It wasn't a good plan, but she didn't have time for better. The dog was half submerged. His front paws scraped the edge of the ice, but they kept slipping. He wasn't barking. He wasn't even making a sound. He just looked at her, eyes wide, still. She crawled toward him on her stomach. The ice groaned under her weight, 1 slow inch at a time. "Don't move," she said, barely above a whisper. "Just hold on. I've got you." The dog didn't fight. He didn't even try to pull away. When she reached out and grabbed his fur, he let her. She pulled with everything she had. Her elbows dug into the ice. Her ribs ached, but she pulled. The scarf helped, just barely. And then he was out. He collapsed on the ice next to her, soaked and shivering. She pressed her hand against his side. His heart was still beating. "Okay," she whispered, out of breath. "You're okay." She didn't know why, but she felt like she'd been waiting her whole life for that moment. She carried him back, step by step. He was heavy, but she didn't care. Her arms shook. Her legs burned. But she made it. Inside the cabin, she dropped to the floor and wrapped him in 2 blankets. The wood stove was still hot. She sat beside him, hands shaking, watching him breathe. His eyes were open. He didn't move, but he was awake. She spoke softly as she dried his fur. "You don't have a tag. You don't have a collar. What were you doing out there?" He didn't answer, of course, but he kept looking at her like he was listening. She made warm oatmeal and set it beside him. He didn't eat at first, but after a few hours he took slow bites. She smiled. It was the first real smile she'd made in weeks. The next day he followed her to the door when she went outside for wood. The day after that, he sat at her feet while she read a book she wasn't even paying attention to. On the 3rd day, she said stay without thinking, and he froze like he had been trained to follow that command. That was when she knew. This dog wasn't a stray. Someone trained him. Someone lost him. Or worse, someone left him. She named him Toby. It just felt right. He looked up when she said it, so she said it again. Toby, she whispered. That your name now? He wagged his tail once. Just once. That was enough. She noticed a small thread behind his right ear a few days later. Blue stitching, barely visible unless you looked hard. It wasn't a wound. It was a number. 8312. Tiny. Neat. She took a picture of it and sent it to a friend from her old unit, a vet tech named Jamie who had worked with military dogs. Check this out, she texted. A few hours later, Jamie called. That's a service code, she said. Clara leaned forward. Military? Yeah, definitely. That's how they tag K-9 assignments. Usually special PTSD units. Dogs like that don't go missing. Well, Clara said quietly. This one did. She didn't want to ask what that meant. But something in her gut started to twist. That night, she gave him water in a metal bowl. When the water hit the bottom, it made a soft sound, like a drop hitting steel. Toby flinched. Then he ran under the table. She froze. Hey, she whispered. It's okay. He stayed under the table for almost 10 minutes. She sat beside him and waited. When he came out, he looked at her like he was sorry. She swapped the metal bowl for ceramic. He drank. The next morning, she found the front screen door open. She always closed it. Always. Inside, nothing looked touched except her phone. It was on the floor. Battery gone. Toby was missing. She didn't panic at first. She just moved. Fast. No coat. No boots. She followed the tracks in the snow, his and one more. Bigger. Deeper. They led around the back of the house toward the shed. She hadn't been in that shed since her grandfather's funeral. The lock was broken. The door cracked open. She stepped inside. Toby was there. Tied up. Muzzle taped. Still. She ripped the tape off and dropped to her knees. Toby. It's me. I'm here. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just laid his head against her. And in the dirt beside him, a single boot print. Not hers. She looked around. Nothing else. Just that print. She didn't call the police. Not in a town like Laney Ridge. People talked. People covered for each other. Out here, justice worked quiet. She carried Toby inside. Locked the doors. Shut every window. Sat beside him and didn't move. Later that night, a knock came at the front step. She opened the door slowly. No one there. But something was left behind. A folded paper under a rock. She picked it up. 3 words. Written in clean block letters. You weren't supposed to. Clara stared at the paper in her hand for a long time. Just 3 words. Nothing else. No name. No threat. Just a fact. You weren't supposed to. She read it again. Then again. The wind had picked up outside. It whistled through the trees like it was passing on a message. Clara turned the note over, looking for anything. A fingerprint. A mark. Nothing. She stepped back inside and locked the door. Not just the knob. The deadbolt too. Then she slid the chair under the handle. Toby was lying by the couch, still quiet. He didn't move when she came in. He just watched her. Eyes steady. No panic. Just waiting. She crouched beside him and ran her hand slowly along his back. He didn't flinch. She whispered, "Did you see who it was?" His tail moved a little. Barely. She sighed and leaned back against the couch. The paper was still in her hand. She folded it twice and slid it into the front pocket of her hoodie. She sat there for hours. She didn't sleep. Didn't eat. Just kept her eyes on the door. That night, she didn't turn the lights off. She kept every lamp on. She wanted whoever came next to know. She was awake and she was ready. The next morning, she drove into town. She didn't say anything to anyone. She just went straight to the little print shop near the gas station. It was run by a quiet woman named Brenda, who didn't ask questions. Clara handed her the photo of Toby's ear and said, "Can you print this bigger?" Brenda nodded and disappeared into the back. While she waited, Clara walked around the tiny store. There were calendars with pictures of fishing boats. Greeting cards no one had bought in years. A dusty bowl of mints on the counter. Her phone was still dead. The battery she ordered hadn't arrived yet. Or maybe it had, and someone had taken it off the porch. She didn't know anymore. Brenda returned with the print. Clara took it and thanked her. No small talk. Back in the truck, she looked at the photo again. 8312. That number stared back at her. Sharp and neat. Blue thread. Jamie hadn't called back since that first message. That wasn't like her. Clara started the truck, then paused. Instead of driving back to the cabin, she turned left. Toward the library. The Laney Ridge Library was quiet and mostly forgotten. One part-time librarian and 3 computers. Clara had been there twice before. She walked in and nodded to the older man behind the desk. "Morning," he said without looking up. She sat at the far computer and waited for it to load. It took almost 2 minutes. She typed, "Military K, 9, Unit Service Tag 8312. Nothing helpful. She changed it, U.S. Army Dog Ear Stitch 8312. Then she tried, K9 PTSD Program ID numbers. That gave her something. A forum. Old. Archived. Vets talking to each other. One post caught her eye. A man from Michigan mentioned his dog, also trained for PTSD support, had a number stitched behind the ear. He said it was a part of a test program that got pulled suddenly. Clara read every reply. Some said it was funding. Some hinted it was something darker, that dogs were being trained too aggressively, that handlers were being pushed out of the program, that some dogs just disappeared. She leaned back and whispered, "Toby, what were you made for?" That night, the wind came back, stronger. The trees groaned like they were trying to warn her. Toby stayed close to her heels wherever she went. If she stood in the kitchen, he was right there. If she went to the bathroom, he lay outside the door. She didn't sleep again. But around 3 in the morning, she finally closed her eyes on the couch. And she dreamed. She was back in the tent. Afghanistan. Someone screaming. She was covered in blood. Not hers. A young soldier, maybe 21, gasping under her hands. She pressed harder, shouting for help, but no one came. Then the screaming stopped, but the eyes stayed open. She woke up with a jolt, heart racing, sweat cold. Toby sat beside her, watching. The next day, someone left a package on the porch. No sound, no knock, just a small brown box, wrapped in plain paper. She opened it carefully. Inside was a collar, torn, dirty. The tag had been removed, but it wasn't just any collar. It was military grade, thick leather, reinforced stitching, the kind used for tactical dogs. She turned it over and saw something scratched into the underside. She didn't recognize it, but Toby did. The moment she held it out, he leaned forward, sniffed, then whimpered. It was the first sound he had made. She dropped to her knees and held his face. "You knew them, didn't you?" His eyes told her yes. Later that afternoon, Clara drove out to the edge of town. There was one person she thought might help, someone who owed her a favor. His name was Mike. He used to work with her grandfather, and now he ran a small security business out of his garage. She pulled into the driveway. The garage door was open. Mike stood beside a row of old monitors, fixing a cracked screen. He looked up and raised an eyebrow. "Clara Monroe. Haven't seen you in a while. I need your help." He nodded. "I figured." Inside, she explained everything. The dog, the tag, the shed, the note. She showed him the collar. Mike didn't interrupt. When she finished, he scratched his beard and said, "I know a guy, retired MP. He still keeps tabs on the old programs. Can you ask him?" Mike nodded. "I'll call him. Might take a day or 2. I don't have much time." Mike looked at her. "You think they're watching you?" "I know they are." He walked to the back room and returned with a small box. "Trail cam. Battery operated. Put it near the tree line. I'll check the footage in a few days." "Thanks. Be careful, Clara. You're not on the base anymore." She looked down. "I know, but I still know how to fight." That night, she placed the camera where Mike told her. Then she sat on the porch with Toby at her feet. She spoke softly. "You were trained for something, and now they want you gone. Why?" Toby didn't move. She reached into her hoodie and pulled out the note again. You weren't supposed to. I wasn't supposed to save you, she whispered. But I did. And now they're scared. She folded the paper and slid it back into her pocket. The trees stood still, watching. 3 nights later, Mike called. I got something, he said. What is it? Your dog. He wasn't supposed to be in that lake. What do you mean? The guy I called, he said dogs from that program were being reassigned after the handler died. But not all of them. Some were tagged for erasure. Erasure means they were taken out quietly. No papers, no records, just gone. Clara's hand tightened on the phone. Toby was one of them? Looks like it. Why? Mike paused. They think he saw something, or was used in something. I don't know the whole story yet. But Clara, this isn't just a lost dog. This is someone's mistake that didn't stay buried. She hung up and sat down slowly. Toby rested his head in her lap. She didn't cry, but for the first time in a long time she wanted to. Clara didn't sleep that night either. Her body was tired, but her mind stayed sharp. She stayed by the window with the lights off, just watching. Toby didn't leave her side. Around 3 in the morning, she heard a car, not passing by, not turning in, just idling, far enough not to see clearly, but close enough to feel. She didn't turn on the porch light. She let whoever was out there know she knew. After 5 minutes, the engine faded. She waited another 10 before breathing deep again. Toby kept his eyes on the door. The next morning, she drove to the county records office. There was one question she needed answered. Something had been bothering her. Why would someone bring a dog like Toby all the way out to a frozen lake in a town as quiet and hidden as Laney Ridge? She asked for all land sale records around the lake from the past 2 years. The clerk, a tired-looking man with thick glasses, handed her a small stack of papers. She scanned line by line. A few names she didn't know. A few LLCs. Then she saw it. Freeman Solutions, LLC. Purchased a cabin near the far end of the lake 6 months ago. Registered to a P.O. box out of state. Cash deal. She copied the address. Who used to own that place? She asked the clerk. He looked it up. Army vet. Died 2 years ago. House stayed empty until that sale. She left without saying a word. That evening, she drove around the lake. It was almost dark by the time she reached the other side. The road narrowed into gravel, then dirt. Toby sat in the passenger seat, ears up, alert. She saw the cabin through the trees. No lights, no smoke. She parked far back and walked the rest of the way. Quiet, careful. The cabin was boarded up. A chain across the front steps. But something was off. A patch of snow near the side was flattened, like someone had stood there recently. She took out her phone, turned on the flashlight, and scanned the ground. Tire tracks. Not from days ago. From last night. She knelt beside the back wall and ran her fingers along the siding. One section was newer, less weathered. Panel moved when she pushed. Behind it, a shallow hole. And inside, a sealed plastic envelope. Dirty. Cold. She opened it slowly. Photos. A dog. Toby. With a man. Young, maybe late 20s. Smiling. Leaning down. Holding Toby's face in his hands. And on the back of the photo, Fess, you saved me first. I won't forget. Clara sat on the ground. Heart full. Mind spinning. Fess. The initials on the collar. This wasn't just any handler. This man loved Toby. Trusted him. She looked at Toby. You weren't dropped, she whispered. You were hidden. But then who sent the note? And why was someone trying to erase a dog that had already been saved? She drove straight to Mike's place. He opened the garage door before she even parked. You okay? He asked. I found something. She handed him the photos. He flipped through them slow. Who's the guy? I don't know yet. But Toby belonged to him. And he trusted him. Mike pointed to a small detail in the corner of one photo. You see this? She leaned in. A badge. Half visible. Blurred. He was military police, Mike said. Active. No. Retired. But that badge isn't standard. That's private. Means he was working contract. Maybe with Freeman Solutions. Clara's stomach dropped. You think they took him out? I think this dog knows something he wasn't supposed to remember. Clara looked at Toby again. He remembers everything. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. No more notes. No more packages. No more cars. But the silence didn't feel safe. Felt like the pause before something worse. Clara didn't go to town. She didn't answer her phone. She just stayed close to the cabin, kept the trail cam active, and watched the road every morning and every night. She made a list of questions in a small notebook. Who was FS? What did he find? What was Freeman Solutions hiding? Why was Toby left behind? Who keeps coming back? She knew one thing for sure. Toby was never meant to die by accident. He was supposed to disappear, but she didn't let him. And now, someone knew she wouldn't stop digging. Then came the letter. Not a note. A typed letter in a clean envelope, left under the cabin door. It had no address, no return name, just words. You're asking questions. Stop. We let the dog live once. We won't again. Clara read it twice, then burned it in the fireplace. She stood outside with Toby that night, staring at the trees. She wasn't running. She'd spent years in worse places with less hope. And now she had a reason. Toby leaned into her leg. Quiet. Clara whispered. They don't get to scare us off. She wasn't a soldier anymore, but she was still trained, still smart, still a fighter. She looked down at the dog who'd looked at her through the ice and didn't give up. They'd come this far together. They weren't stopping now. The next morning, Clara opened the front door and stood still. The snow was fresh, clean, quiet. Nothing moved, but the feeling was back. That edge in the air like being watched. Toby stepped outside first, sniffing the wind. He didn't bark. He never did. But his ears lifted. His body leaned forward. Clara crouched beside him. You smell it too, don't you? Toby didn't answer. He didn't need to. She stood and scanned the edge of the woods. The trail cam Mike had set was still latched to the tree. She walked over and pulled the memory card. Back inside, she slipped it into the reader Mike gave her. The images loaded slow, one by one. Nothing unusual at first. Just shadows, trees, a deer once, a squirrel. Then, at 3:12 a.m., a figure, standing at the edge of the trees. Not moving, not approaching, just watching the house. Clara leaned closer. The photo wasn't clear, but the outline was strong. Heavy coat, short haircut, male. And then, in the next frame, he was gone. Toby sat beside her, watching the screen. She looked down. We're out of time. That evening, she called Mike. I need a name, she said. The man in the photo. Mike paused. I can run it through a match program. Might take a few hours. I'll wait. Clara didn't pace. She didn't fidget. She just sat on the floor beside Toby. If they were going to come, she wanted to be clear on something. She wasn't afraid. Not anymore. 2 hours later, Mike called back. His name's Logan Cray, he said. Private contract investigator. Used to work in Army Intel. Quiet history. Nothing public. But he's connected to Freeman Solutions. What's he doing in Laney Ridge? Making sure loose ends stay loose. She nodded, though no one could see her. Thanks, Mike. One more thing, he said. I checked on the guy in those photos. Full name was Franklin Shore. He didn't die in training like the records said. He filed a formal complaint against Freeman 3 days before he disappeared. What kind of complaint? Abuse of animals. Misuse of PTSD therapy dogs. Illegal repurposing. Clara felt her chest tighten. So they erased him. Looks that way. And Toby? They dumped him after Franklin vanished. But not before trying to retrain him to forget everything. She looked at the dog beside her. He remembered anyway. That night, Clara didn't sleep. She gathered what she had. The photos. The collar. The number in Toby's ear. The letter. She made copies of everything and drove into town just before dawn. She left the copies in 3 different places. one in Mike's garage, one in Brenda's print shop, one in the book drop at the Laney Ridge Library. If anything happened to her, people would know. People would ask questions. She drove back slowly, the sun rising behind her. Toby sat quietly in the passenger seat. She reached over and laid her hand on his back. "We're not done yet." When they got home, the front door was open. She stopped the car halfway up the driveway. No sound. No sign of movement. She stepped out slowly. Toby followed, his ears up, body tense. She didn't rush. She had spent years walking into unknown rooms, into danger, into blood and fire and noise. She knew how to move. The cabin was empty, but something was left on the kitchen table. A photo, recent, of Clara, walking with Toby, near the lake. She stared at it, at herself. It was taken from a distance. She turned it over. One line was written on the back. Last warning. She didn't scream, didn't curse. She just stood there, and for the first time in months, she felt something sharp and focused rise in her chest. Not fear, not grief, purpose. She called Mike again. "I want to meet him." "Who?" "Cray, the man watching us." "Clara, I'm not asking." Silence, then a sigh. "I'll set it up, but not alone." "Fine." 2 nights later, they met at an old bait shack near the river. Mike stood by the door. Clara and Toby went in first. Logan Cray was already inside, sitting at a dusty table. Calm, clean-shaven, military haircut, mid-40s. "You brought the dog," he said. Clara didn't answer. Cray smiled slightly. "You always were bold, Monroe." Her face didn't move. "You know me? I've read your file." She sat down. Toby sat at her feet, eyes locked on Cray. Cray leaned back. "This was never supposed to get messy." "You mean saving a life?" He tilted his head. "You don't know what that dog was part of." "I know enough." "You don't." He wasn't just a therapy animal. He was tested for response control, behavioral memory wipes. He wasn't stable. Clara's voice stayed low. "He remembers Franklin Shore." Cray's jaw clenched. Clara leaned in. "So do I." "You should have let it be." She stood up. "You're not the only one who keeps records, Cray. If something happens to me, this doesn't go away." He didn't speak. "I know what he is. But more than that, he's mine now." Cray looked down at Toby, then back at her. "Then I hope you know what you're risking." Clara walked to the door. "I'm not risking. I'm choosing." Mike didn't say much on the drive back. Clara sat with one hand resting on Toby's back, eyes fixed on the dark trees flashing past. She felt tired, but it wasn't the same tired she carried when she first arrived in Laney Ridge. This wasn't numbness. It was weight, the steady kind. The kind you carry when you've made a decision and there's no going back. When they reached the cabin, Mike turned the truck off but didn't move. "What now?" he asked quietly. "I wait," she said. "For what?" "For them to see I'm not going anywhere." Days passed. No notes. No visits. No shadows in the trees. It was almost worse that way, waiting, knowing something could come and not knowing when. Clara kept the trail cam up. She checked it every morning. But there were no new faces. Just deer, rabbits, wind, and Toby. He was different now. He didn't flinch when she filled his bowl. He didn't sleep curled up in the corner. He laid near her feet, stretched out. His tail wagged when she came down the stairs. And sometimes, when the fire crackled low at night, he would press his nose into her hand and stay there, like he didn't want to forget again, like he wanted to be remembered. She started writing it all down. The dates, the notes, the collar, the photo, the conversation with Cray. She made a folder, labeled it Toby's file, because this wasn't just her story. It was his. Then one morning, everything shifted. Brenda from the print shop called. "I need to see you," she said. "Now." Clara drove into town. The sky was low and heavy with snow clouds. Inside the shop, Brenda handed her a small envelope. "This came in the drop box," she said. "No return name." Clara opened it. Inside was a copy of an internal report. Watermarked. Classified. Freeman Solutions. Behavioral Canine Termination Records. 6/18. At the top, Toby Unit ID 8312. Status: non-compliant. Memory recall remains intact despite reprogramming. Subject retains trauma-linked handler behavior. Recommendation: decommission. Below that, a single handwritten note. Subject disappeared before decommission could be completed. Unknown civilian may be involved. Clara stared at it for a long time. This proves it, Brenda said softly. Yeah, Clara whispered. It does. She folded the paper and placed it in her coat pocket. They tried to erase him. He survived. Later that evening, Clara drove out to Mike's. She handed him the document. His face stayed calm. This is enough. Will it hold? With my name on it and yours? It'll make noise. He nodded once, then added, I've got a contact at the Milwaukee paper. I'll send it tonight. Clara looked out the garage window. The trees swayed gently under fresh snow. What do I tell him? She asked. Tell him the truth, Mike said. A soldier saved a dog. Then the dog saved her. The article went live 2 days later. Veteran exposes hidden K-9 termination program after saving military service dog from near death. They used her name. They used Toby's picture. Not the one from the ice, but one Brenda took a week later, where he sat next to Clara on the porch, both of them looking off toward the lake. The article spread. Other names came forward. Other dogs. Other vets. Some had stories. Some only had pieces. But the silence cracked. And once it cracked, the truth started to pour out. One morning, weeks later, Clara got a letter in the mail. No return address. But she knew the handwriting. It was Jamie, the vet tech from her old unit. It only said one thing. I knew Toby. I trained him. And I'm proud of you both. She folded the note and put it in the folder with the rest. Spring came late that year. The snow melted slow. The lake thawed. One evening, Clara sat on the porch with Toby lying across her feet. The sun was low. The wind was soft. And for the first time in a long time, she felt it. The thing she didn't think would come back. Peace. She looked down at the dog who had once given up. And then she looked out at the lake. He was never supposed to be saved. She wasn't supposed to find him. But somehow they saved each other anyway. Thank you to my amazing family for staying with me until the end of this story. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed this journey, I just know you'll love what comes next. I've prepared something even more exciting and surprising that I can't wait to share with you. Just click on the end card appearing on your screen right now to watch the next one.